My name is Silas, and my friends and colleagues know two very important things about me. I'm a conductor, and I love coffee, especially espresso. No matter where I travel in the world, the first thing I try to do is find the best coffee shop and learn about the local coffee drinking habits. If I can, I try to meet up with old friends or make new ones in a coffee shop, of course, so we can talk about life, art, music, or whatever's on our minds. I found that there's no better way to get to know a conductor a little better than by having coffee with the maestro. Today I'm having coffee with Jeremy Cuebas. He's a great young conductor who I met when I lived in Colorado, and he was a student at Colorado State University. He's one of the founders and hosts of Podium Time. It's a really great podcast for students and conductors. And so I thought I would give him a call this morning and have some coffee with him. All right. Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm great, Silas. How are you?
Nice to see you again.
You as well. It's been a while. Was it Montreal, February?
Montreal, yeah, when we were all allowed to travel. That was nice.
Back in the day.
I don't know what you've canceled since then, but I had a lot of little trips, conferences, a couple of gigs, some workshops, and all that stuff just went out the window. And
Yeah.
wow.
I had my first professional violin and guest conducting gig scheduled in April, and so both of those got canned. But
sorry. Well, you're still doing stuff though. I know you're still doing Podium Time, and you're doing this workshop online right now. How's that workshop?
It's great. Mark Ann Thacker is teaching a class called Make Beautiful Music. So we meet weekly. We've got homework between things, and we're kind of going through his books and then digging everything apart even more. So we're doing a lot with the creation and release of energy, and we're getting into looking at forms. So we're starting with tonicizations and large scale creation and release of energy. It's fascinating. I only kind of discovered his work like right before Montreal, and then I met him this past February, and then when I saw that he was doing the class, I jumped on it because I really wanted to work with him more, and it's
I
really
saw
great.
I saw you guys talking in Montreal. I guess was it like officially, and it was the International Conductors Guild Conference in Montreal, and was that an official like mentoring session?
Yeah, so he had I had downloaded his like conducting class stuff a couple weeks earlier, and then you put your email in and he emails it, so he sees everyone who downloads it, and he sent me an email and just kind of introduced himself and asked how I'm doing, and then he asked if I would mind if he sent me some critiques on my videos, and I said yeah, of course. And then he sent me this just wall of an email just out of nowhere, like from the videos from my recital that I have online, like a lot of general things, but then a lot of specific things. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That hurts, but it was like really good stuff. And then when I got to Montreal that first night, I saw the mentoring sessions and I realized that he was going to be there. So I signed up for a mentoring session, and he said, well, I'm so glad you did, because I wanted to send you more, and I didn't know if that was too much. So now we can... So now we had a good talk, and now we're working together more, which is great because I haven't had a chance to do his Baltimore workshops.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that it was painful, because feedback is always, good feedback sometimes feels weird to get, but good feedback isn't helpful. Bad feedback is helpful, and bad feedback is what none of us want.
Yeah.
You go to a workshop and you just want to get on the podium and you want to have the maestro say, that was perfect, amazing, you need to get a job immediately, but that doesn't help us get better.
Yeah.
But people get crushed at workshops, but I like the pain that comes from a good critique.
Yeah, as long as it's constructive. Like I've done when I was studying composition, I did a couple master classes that just they just weren't constructive. It was basically just like, this is wrong, you should have done this, you should have done this. And it was the composition teacher just like telling me what I should have done instead. And I learned a little bit from that, but then that piece was also about to be performed and it was too late to finish, and they weren't talking about broad concepts. They were just like, this is bad, that's fine. that's bad. And then, that just got me down and I didn't learn anything from it. So as long as the criticism is good, and it usually is, it's the exception that we don't learn anything from.
Yeah, agreed. There are conducting teachers. I mean, most of the people who have a good reputation as conducting teachers have a reputation like that for a reason. They're pretty good at what they do. And I think they can give you good feedback without crushing your soul. But then there are those famous teachers, you and I know one or two, that they get a kick out of crushing souls. And you're like, that wasn't really necessary. Why did I have to leave the podium in tears just to,
Yeah. I think it all depends on the student, because sometimes I think the best teachers know what the student needs to hear at that moment, and they can communicate that. And some of the tougher teachers I've had good experiences with, because I kind of needed the kick in the pants then. I needed somebody to tell me, like, you just need to do this better. And and that I have a couple moments in my life where that was exactly what I needed at that point. And then sometimes I needed care and, like, look, you're doing great, let's just fix these couple things. And so I think it all depends on the situation. But yeah, some people are just like, no, all the time. They have no care about what the student says. They just want to look good and say their thing and fix the music and whatever. And that's not as helpful.
Yeah, that's great. You're doing this online workshop now, but did you have any other workshops lined up that you had to sort of cancel going to?
I had one that I was on the wait list for, and then that all got canceled. So I'm gonna apply. That was one of the bigger Northeastern ones. So I'm gonna apply to that again next year. But no, nothing really got canceled. I was hoping to get in there, but I don't know whether I did or not because I canceled it. So
You'll never know.
We'll never know.
You got in. You got in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was canceled.
Yeah.
I'm heartbroken about the cancellation of the ICI Czech workshop this year.
Oh yeah.
Because I don't participate really anymore. Sometimes I get on the podium and I get some feedback from whoever's teaching, but this summer it was going to be Kirk Trevor and Diane Whittree. And that was the team that taught last summer, and they were a great team, and they each have different things to say, and they're both kind and also really knowledgeable. They give different advice, but good advice. And also, it's just, I've known both of them for years, but I've been studying with Kirk for 15 years, so I really know him well. And Diane a little bit, I know her a little less well. And it's just nice to hang out with people. When you go to those intensive workshops, it's not just, you're 10 minutes on the podium. You get to spend a lot of time with them. You have meals and drinks and after hours stuff with the instructors, and you get to know them. And I was really looking forward to it. And it goes without saying that even as the coordinator of the workshop, I learn a ton at workshops.
Yeah.
I'm not a participant, because I've always thought that you learn kind of as much watching the other participants as you do when you're on the podium. Mostly because when you're on the podium, you're like really, a lot of stuff's going on, and you get feedback and it almost doesn't register until hours later or days later when you watch the video.
Yeah, I went to the ICWF workshops last year and audited, and I learned a lot over the 2 weeks. But the biggest thing I took away from it was they started doing this thing accidentally with Larry and Don, where each student had a note card that they kept with them through the workshop. And I really want, if I ever have a workshop in the future, I really want to do this, or if I teach it one, to keep a note card with the list of things that you're working on. And then you meet with them after each session for like 5 minutes to go over a little bit more, which is tough for the teachers because it's a lot of extra work. But having a note card where both parties can spell out, this is what we're focusing on today, I thought was really helpful, and all the students loved it because it takes off that pressure of remembering everything. It makes concrete, maybe we're not working on dynamics or pacing or whatever. We're just working on your phrasing or just getting your feet to stay put, something like that. But
that's a really great idea. I've been doing workshops for 20 years and like, that's a great idea. It took me, I studied with Kirk probably 3 or 4 years before I realized that he kept a notebook with notes from each of the students that he daily would switch back and forth the pages. But one year he was, giving me a hard time after a session. And then he flipped in his notebook and he goes, well, on Tuesday, you did this with your left hand at bar 373, But then the next time your right hand did this at bar 972. And I was like, what? You have like a really detailed collection of notes about me? And so since I learned that, now I'm always asking him after sessions where I conduct, can I see his notes? And he's really nice about sharing it. But he must have reams, and he's been doing it so long. He's had thousands of students. He must have reams and reams of books like that. Yeah, cool. Well, you still have been keeping you've been staying busy, I'll bet, with Podium Time.
Yeah, Podium Time. I'm still working my 9 to 5, which is great, working from home. But wish I had a little bit more time to study. But that's the back and forth. But yeah, Podium Time's going well. Right when the shutdowns hit, we interviewed like crazy. Like we got 11 interviews out right away in the first 2 weekends. We were exhausted, and so we've still been a little burnt out on interviewing people, and those have been very slow. So we actually, if we release the podcast of interviews with conductors, we release every 2 weeks usually. But then I was doing the math the other day, and I kept having people that we wanted to talk to be on the podcast, and we're still we just released one that we recorded in November. Like, we're so backed up. We have ones that we recorded last year where 2020 was the future, and we're still trying to release these, plus all of these interviews we recorded in like March and April. So we're moving to releasing every week just to get some of that backlog out. Otherwise we would be still doing these older episodes like all the way through August. So we're keeping busy with that. We're scheduling more people. We've been Luke's running an initiative to start talking to some composers on the podcast as well. So we're branching out there a little bit, and then
yeah, it sounds like you need material.
Right. Yeah, so we're slowly starting to schedule again, but really we're just we've got so many great interviews recorded. We're just trying to get them all out there and stay sane at the same time.
Yeah, cool. And I've been listening to Podium Time since the beginning, and I noticed that it's getting better. It's just a lot cleaner technologically, and I don't know. I can see. I think it's a microphone in front of you that you're talking into. What is this black thing?
This is the Blue Snowball.
What is that?
It's quite cheap, which is, it's a really good intro microphone. I was actually using the speakers on my Q4N, but these are a little too sensitive. Actually, they're not good for speech, because using this as an external microphone, this is meant for like high quality audio recording. So the Blue Snowball is actually just a little bit not as good, which is perfect because it's much better for the voice, and it's pretty cheap. It was like $80-$90 or something.
Yeah.
And it looks a little funky.
You sound great right now. That's what I'm hearing you through right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Clear and crisp. I showed you this before we started, but I've got a boom mic with a not very fancy condenser microphone. I went all out. I'm trying to do something really high quality here, so I spent $30 on a microphone.
Wow.
Big deal. I actually own a much nicer microphone, but it's in Colorado, and I'm in Kansas.
Oh, yeah.
So next time I get to Colorado, whenever that is, I'll pick it up, and maybe my coffee with the maestro sessions will sound better.
Yeah.
But I'm learning a lot, and I'm not trying to. I was kidding. I'm not trying to do anything fancy. But I'm learning each time I have coffee with the maestro that there's little things that go wrong, and lighting. Now I've added lighting, I guess, with Podium Time Podcast. Lighting's not an issue because it's just audio.
Yeah, that's one nice thing is I've intentionally avoided doing videos just because it makes it a lot harder to edit also.
Well, I think, having listened to a bunch of I don't think I've heard them all, because like you said, you've been releasing a lot recently.
We've got 75 out now, I think.
Oh my gosh. I probably haven't listened to most of the ones since March. I've listened to 2 or 3, but not all of them. But anyway, I always learn a ton from your podcast, even when the person is talking about stuff that I kind of already know, or I feel like the person you're interviewing and I are kind of like in the same place in our career, but I still learn a ton from every interview, because it's just great to hear different people's perspective. And there's only been 1 or 2 guests that I like flat out disagreed with. because we have it's such a subjective art. So
Yeah.
kind of hard to just say, no, that's wrong.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
and that's the thing that I'm finding fascinating, because I still consider myself a conducting student. I'm not a professional yet. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still focusing on honing the craft as a student, because I don't have a conducting job yet. Um, but taking in, I studied with a couple teachers in person. I've done a couple workshops, but nothing compared to talking to 70 something different people with different opinions and getting absolutely conflicting advice. And
yeah,
it's like it's weird in my head, but applying all of these things and seeing that, I find that the answer in conducting and in life is never one of the two extremes. It's always something more complex in the middle,
right,
right?
right.
It's not about 100% technique. It's not about 100%, it's somewhere in the middle. So we have teachers that are all the way on one side, all the way on the other, some that are in the middle. And so I just find such great benefit, and I hope people are listening and finding the same thing, that taking all the opinions, all the tactics that have worked for people, all the philosophies, and combining them into your own that works for you, because it is such a subjective art, and there are no answers. There are
Yeah,
no answers.
I agree. We could have a very long conversation about all the stuff that's going on in the world right now, but we won't. Because for obvious, I mean, it would just take forever. But
Yeah.
I like what you said about how it's never all the way A or all the way B or left and right in politics. But yeah, like conductors, artists, people in general have become very polarized in their beliefs about the solutions to
Yeah.
problems.
Anytime I see somebody stating the obvious, stating something that's a fact, or stating that the opposite is totally untrue, I I I, I check myself to look for the other side. And I mean, it's really easy to see in politics that one side thinks they're absolutely right and the other side is absolute demons. It doesn't matter which side you're on. The other side is the devil, and they're the worst people on the planet, and it doesn't make sense, which tells me that the answer is somewhere in the middle. It's
Right. They
it's
can't all be wrong or all
yeah.
they can't have to be exactly right and wrong. And in conducting, it's the same too, because there's that age old question about technique versus musicality. And we all know some of the greatest conductors in history had pretty lousy technique. And then there are some fantastic technicians, and their performances lack heart and depth. And so, yeah,
It's
struggling to
somewhere
do
in the
both.
middle.
Yeah,
It's yeah, you can't. I would say don't ignore any viewpoint. Always take it into consideration. I mean, unless it's like totally wrong, but that's a different.
but I mean, who's totally wrong?
Well, I'm thinking about like racism and stuff.
Oh, I was thinking
Like
about
that.
conducting.
That's conducting is. I don't know. I can't think of it totally wrong. You should conduct with your feet. Maybe disregard that one entirely.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the fence about conducting left-handed. I think we both know people who conduct with the baton in their left hand, and I'm like, that's just not right. But why not?
I've
I don't know why one
the
could.
the complaint I've heard about that is just from the players, that it's a pain for players. Have told me it's a pain to adjust to that. Mostly like the 2-3-4 versus the 3-4 when it goes to the left. I mean, but it's not a huge deal. Again, there are much more important things to being a conductor than
Right.
which way your beat goes. You can get through a career without ever showing a beat pattern. It's not going to be easy,
Mhm.
but you can. It's
The right
definitely not the
orchestra.
most. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man. Well, this chat will be posted later, but today's the 4th of July.
It is.
So
Yes.
it's an exciting holiday, and I think the Fort Collins Symphony is doing a concert today, and nobody else in
That's
the
right.
country is doing concerts.
I
Going
know.
out to the world, but it's some kind of drive-in movie theater concert. What does it look like?
Mhm. Yeah, so we had a very quick rehearsal yesterday on the 3rd. You know, we had we did one service for a rehearsal and a recording. So that was fast. And then so tonight there will be on YouTube a live stream of the recording that we did yesterday, so it's not a live stream, but it's, it's a 4th of July thing. So Fort Collins Symphony did gather yesterday. We had protocols in place in the Lincoln Center. Everyone was seated distanced. We all had masks, all the everything. It was a complex endeavor. And we got a nice big list of rules, but it happened. We got on stage, we rehearsed, we recorded a thing for the local TV stations. And then tonight at the Holiday Twin Drive-In Theater in Fort Collins, Colorado, we are doing a concert with not fireworks, but with like a laser light show and some practical effects. So I haven't seen them, but I believe we have mini cannons and some fire shooting off the stage. But the orchestra is still distanced, and we're playing for an audience of people in cars.
And I guess the sound is, the orchestra's mic'd up and then it's being broadcast in the radio or some other method?
I would think so. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not involved in that aspect of it. But I would think they must be putting it through the radio in some way. I'll find out in a couple hours.
Yeah,
but then
by the time people hear us talking right now, it'll already be news in the orchestra.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it hasn't been more news because again, getting into rehearsal yesterday was incredible. It was just it felt so normal, but also so weird. And I had this moment where usually I don't get to conduct very much. I'm still early in my career. I'm still conducting maybe once every couple months when I get a chance. And I realized that our music director was the same way. Like, he hadn't conducted since the last time I conducted. And it was like this weird thing where, of course, usually he's conducting every day for whatever orchestra. And all the players maybe had been practicing for sure, but definitely hadn't played in an orchestra together. So it was just a beautiful, very fast rehearsal. Again, we had about an hour to put together the program, and then tonight's program is a little bit longer because we're adding the 1812 and a couple other things. But it was.
What kind of precautions did the orchestra take? I mean, obviously you must have been spread far apart from each other. Mm-hmm. Is there plexiglass or anything like that?
There's plexiglass here and there. All the strings were separated on stage. All the strings had masks and their own music stand. So a lot of people more than usual brought their iPads, so they could, be able to flip the pages with their foot instead of the entire string section reaching forward. Percussion was only using their own equipment, so they weren't sharing any equipment. Winds and brass were unmasked, but they were separated by plexiglass, and they were given individual cups for their residue, I guess, if you want to use less than their spit. They were given individual cups, so they weren't just spitting.
So
and then we had pretty strict. This is where you're allowed to walk. This is how long you're allowed to be here. This is how many people are in this room. We had to do temperature checks. Everybody had a mask. We had, we had everything, and we were working with the city and the Lincoln Center to set that up.
Crazy.
The sound was actually pretty good. Intonation was an ensemble. We're both a little tough just because everyone's a lot farther apart.
Yeah, and it's been a while, like you said.
And it's been a long time, yeah.
Skill that I think must go away if you don't do it. And and just so sitting farther away from each other made it harder to tune. That's interesting.
Just a little. I mean, it was very slight, but yeah, a little bit.
I think everyone's wondering what their local orchestra is going to be doing in the fall or next spring or next fall. If you can imagine, a couple of orchestras already canceled the whole season.
Absolutely.
Quite a few have canceled the fall. I here in Kansas at Washburn University, we're still up in the air a little bit, but currently in-person orchestra is going to happen in the fall. But I think we'll be doing social distancing, and my numbers will be capped, pretty small,
like
20 or 25 people. So I'm curious. I'm trying to figure out how to seat everyone far away from each other and how that will work.
I wonder if you could cut the orchestra like into two smaller orchestras and do smaller reps. That maybe.
Yeah, someone else suggested that too. So instead of a 20-piece orchestra, I could have two 20-piece orchestras.
Yeah.
And then I thought, then for the concert, we can all come together and it'll be 40 people. But I don't think I can do that. Also, will there be any concerts?
Yeah.
We've already canceled our big holiday concert in December. And then we've got two other concerts in the fall, but I think that we'll be project, like live streaming those with no audience.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I mean, right now I know what the university has said is going to happen, but I know that will change before the semester
Absolutely.
starts. So I haven't spent too much brain power solving all the problems, because the problems are going to change in the next couple of weeks anyway, and I have to rethink it all out. So yeah, crazy times.
Yeah. I know some orchestras, and what I believe is that one of the other orchestras I work with is planning a smaller season, because I think they have a guarantee of how many seats they can have. Like the hall that they work with has already figured out what it's going to look like. And they know they can do that now. So hopefully we're only better in a couple months. And then, so they can start planning like that. But the toughest thing about right now is just the planning. We don't know. You can only plan so much.
Yeah.
And then wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we have to, the like opera and theater and them, they have a much longer rehearsal schedule. They take at least maybe a month or a couple of weeks at least. We're lucky in that we can put a concert together in an hour like we did yesterday. So that's a benefit, is that we can pivot really quickly.
Right. Yeah. Well, we have a couple of advantages. Everyone's at a disadvantage right now because of the crisis, but orchestras and we musicians have a little bit of an advantage, because, like you said, it's less of a big operation than like an opera or a musical theater or even a play. But I find this, it's also a little bit advantageous that everyone has free time right now.
Yeah.
So during normal times, if you tried to move a rehearsal by a couple of hours or by a day, it would never work, because musicians are all booked up. They're teaching, they've got other rehearsals, they've got to do this. But now if you say, well, what if we don't do it at 2? What if we do it at 9? People are like, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, too. Which it's not good, but it's a little bit of an advantage as far as keeping our industry flexible.
Yeah, and I think the innovations that are going to come out of this are something we should definitely appreciate. Kind of this, orchestras in general have been kind of just writing and just doing the same thing generally. We haven't been kicked in the pants like this for a long time, if ever. So I mean, we're doing this concert at the drive-in, and it's really popular, and it's going to be great. And it never would have happened. We never would have questioned our 4th of July concert or questioned an alternative venue for a Pops concert if we hadn't have been forced to come up with a new idea. So I think I'm encouraging people to lean into the reset that we're all getting right now, and use that to come up with some new ideas while you have to, and then celebrate those even more than usual. What I really hope doesn't happen, is that we just get back into the same seasonal grind that we had been doing for so long.
I think your optimism is beautiful. and I'm happy to hear you say that, because you're right. Orchestras have gotten in a rut for the last, 200 years, let's say. But for sure, the last 20 or 30 years, I mean, since I've been paying attention, about, let's say 20, 25 years, I've heard this conversation over and over again. How is the classical music world, the orchestral world, going to evolve and change, and how are we going to adapt to the new, this new century and technology? And everybody, there's a lot of great ideas, but no one ever put them into place because they're expensive, and we have a good thing going already. We had a good thing going, and why rock the boat? And well, we can't change what we're doing because people like that so much, but we really need to change what we're doing. And so this is a good, an unfortunate, unforeseen opportunity to change our whole industry for the better, because now we're kind of starting from scratch, and that not just with technology and like the stuff you're talking about, but with programming too. This right now, what's going on with Black Lives Matter, and a lot of people paying attention to diversity and programming and whatnot, and people who said for years we really should be doing this thing, but then just didn't. Now we're being forced to do it, and so I think it's a good thing.
Yeah. One thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is the idea that orchestras don't just have to play as an orchestra. Members from that orchestra can go play as a quartet, or the orchestra can play as a chamber orchestra. Smaller things can happen. I think getting out of the idea that an orchestra has to be this number of people playing this repertoire in this location is being destroyed, and that's very nice. We just talked with maybe our biggest or second biggest, one of our biggest guests, On Wednesday, we talked with Teddy Abrams of the
great.
Louisville Orchestra, and this is kind of what we talked about. We talked about redefining that we are more than just 80 people on a stage in this hall. Whether that's empowering your musicians to go off and do more creative things on their own or smaller groups, or what he's been doing for a long time is having way more pop music in their programming, and people love it, and it's good because it's good music. Anyway, that's a recording that's coming up pretty soon.
Now you said you're super backlogged with Podium Time, so when might we hear that interview?
So we're kind of going back and forth between the old and the new, so that we're not just going in the order. Some of them, like in our interview with Joanne Folletta and with Chris Roundtree, were very topical. They had a lot of stuff about this pandemic, so we released them almost right away. And then the less topical ones are less, the more general conducting episodes are less urgent to get out. Yeah. So like this one, we talked about current events, so we're looking at releasing it in about a week and a half. And yeah, so we're kind of picking from the back and picking from the front and then going back. Figuring out the schedule has been a little tough because like what's ideal, but a lot of the people were just happy to be on, and we're just happy to have their interview. And I wish I could release them all at once and throw them out in a day, but that's just not realistic.
Well, as I've told you before, starting that podcast and having these conversations is a pretty great education for a conductor at the beginning of his career. And so, I'm glad you did it. And I think that the people that listen to the podcast, if they listen to all 75 episodes, is that what you had?
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone listened to all 75 episodes or most of the 75 episodes, it's kind of like the equivalent of getting a master's degree in conducting. There's so much information, so many opinions, and so much stuff that you can digest, and then you can decide what you're going to embrace and what you're going to set aside. But just like, it's really great what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. And it was a little selfish when I started it. I kind of was like, well, I've always wanted to start a podcast, and this will be a great way to meet people, and I'll learn a lot, and so I still run it for selfish means. I'm getting so much out of it, and I hope other people are too. And I know students are, but every time I meet someone that listens to it, that's so great. And I hope people are listening and learning. And I think a big part of what makes it great is that person, whoever we talk to, their experience. It's not just their opinions and their knowledge. It's their actual experience of what works for them and what doesn't. And then again, the mixture of all of those. So yeah, I think a master's degree in audio is a good way to put it. A philosophical master's degree anyway.
Well, I have you and probably Jerry Seinfeld to thank for this idea of Coffee with the Maestro, because I love that show, comedians in cars drinking coffee. And maybe we're not as funny as them, but
that's okay.
But hopefully these little casual chats with conductors will be interesting to somebody. But I'm out of coffee, so I think it's time to cut off our.
Well, that's a good time. I'm almost out, but I've got another half of a pot ready for me.
And I think you're off to a master class soon, so maybe we better end. But thanks for drinking coffee with me.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to drink coffee with you, Simon.
Stay safe. I can't wait to see you again in person.
Yeah, soon.